I think another reason avoidance shows up is just lack of capacity, both from just a brain space capacity, like mental capacity and time capacity issues. So yeah, that's also one that founders usually need to hire earlier than they think, focusing on the next development or focusing on the next, delivery method or whatever that might be.
Starting to see more and more of those processes that were reliant on us being able to be delegated and given to somebody else. And I think that's when you choose to have them reflection moments that you're like, yeah, we have transitioned from like a self-employed new job kind of model into a functional system that will operate without our daily input. And then that's a massive achievement just in itself.
What's still on the back of your chair?
Oh, it's just a freshly cleaned stripe. Not grease, nothing like that. Just straight up cleansed.
The first thing that Andrea says when we get on this call recording is, Alex, what's happened to your eye? What's happened to your eye, Alex?
We all get bouts of pink eye from time to time. We just have occasionally different methodologies of attracting it. Mine, I'd just like to clarify, has come from the children.
Oh, okay. All right.
And not from Yasmin.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've been dealing with this for about a week now.
I'm so happy you cleared that up because there will be people thinking, how?
So, yeah, just clarification, it's not Yasmin. It's our grotty children. With children at kindy.
That's cool. Hot takes this week. I think one thing I saw that was kind of crazy to even fathom was, did you see the news about the Derail group going under?
Nope.
So, yeah, Derail's like New Zealand's biggest property developer. The directors were previously bankrupt before, maybe 10 years ago or something. And, they've got wealth management products. They've got, obviously, building development. They've got investment products. They've got all sorts of stuff. And the 6 a.m. on a fateful morning, their mansion was scoured by the FMA and the police. And, yeah, they were taken... They lost control of the company. They handed it over. And essentially they've been given, I think it's like, I heard $1,500 a week to live on. From having a private jet and, massive mansion to $1,500 a week is going to be a rude shock, I can imagine.
Probably doesn't cover groceries, really.
No. All the power bill.
Yeah. And then you put that into context of $1,500 elsewhere. It's a reasonable living for the vast majority of the population.
Yeah.
Hot takes at my end. There's been quite a bit going on in the big wide world. I've seen things as obscure as the Democrat kind of public appearances using AI to flesh out their audiences.
Whoa.
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. So that's been quite interesting, like before and afters of that. Not that I want to get into politics by any means, because it's not a topic that I do much research on. I just like the entertainment factor of the US and what a shit show it is. And then Elon did a live conversation with Trump on X.
Oh, I did hear this.
Completely broke the platform. Like people try to DDoS it for a solid hour, just killed all the bandwidth to basically stop it from happening. So I think they ended up doing it behind like a closed door policy. So that was quite interesting to watch. So yeah, that's the sort of stuff that I've been following this week.
No, that's all good. All right, let's get into this week's episode. It's one that I suppose being in business 5 years, there's certain things that you experience and see other founders do that we've somehow avoided. Still in business in 5 years, we've beat the odds in most ways. I think, 95% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years of business or something like that. So I feel like we have got some credibility here to talk about like avoiding some of those leading downfalls that founders do fall into.
We've eclipsed it by 30 days.
Boom.
So we could close it tomorrow and it's done basically.
It's just like episode 21 of the podcast will be the one in the top 1% of all podcasts. So just playing the game, just playing the numbers. But yeah, talking about some of the pitfalls that people fall into. We've seen friends get into business and have businesses fall over, right underneath their feet. We've seen, even larger companies who've been in business longer but not kind of got to that scale stage do exactly the same thing. But I thought we could focus more on, like, from a founder point of view, what we think we've done well in combating some of those major, or some of those things that pop up all the time.
Yeah, right. And throughout our 5 years of building Amped specifically, there have been times where, like, we felt bulletproof and, like, just trajectory is, this is never going to stop. And then you have something that does that kind of shake the foundations a little bit, and then it throws that extreme doubt into your mindset. And I think the long lasting impact of that is how you show up, and then how you make decisions powerfully, and kind of that doubt is a bit of a killer. Or do you think that these, like, fears and anxieties, i.e., you know, we're going to lose all of our clients, do you think that is like a suppressed thing that's always in the background, or do you think it takes an event to occur to bring it to the surface, and then that be like the leading thought stream daily until you choose to shift it?
Yeah, I think it's unexamined thoughts, like a trigger, which leads to unexamined thoughts, which leads to unexamined feelings, which leads to actions. That's usually the kind of thought trajectory. Like, I remember our first time we lost a client to a competitor, we were like, yeah, we're going to lose them all. They're attacking us, you know. So they're after our 7 clients.
We've been identified as, like, target number 1 in New Zealand, this tiny little staffing firm. Let's take the 6 clients. Let's make them starve. Let's make them hurt.
They're a massive threat, you know. I think it's that kind of process. Other common anxieties that I see in founders are, you know, the product's not good enough, so they never start, you know, or they never launch. They're constantly in build stage. They're more for, like, app developers or app tech companies and all that kind of stuff. They never get it to market because it just dies in their head, or they just never think they can be competitive. And I think that comes down to scarcity belief. Like, there are always going to be those market leaders who are incredible, like going and taking on the likes of Xero. Yeah. Probably, you know, it'd have to be a really compelling reason to go and do that, or like a different, you know, a completely different way of accounting or whatever that might be. But, you know, things like fitness apps or community apps or things that integrate into people's lifestyles, I think there's always a market for a different version of that. And I just see it as sometimes founders get into that, like, anxiety of, like, it's just not good enough. I'm currently going through it myself, right?
Frame a solid question on that. I was going to say, like, you know, looking closer to home in the last 90 days. Yeah. You know, has this been present for us, or specifically kind of you with the product side of it and the delivery and service side versus, you know, when you touched on getting things to market and testing it and pushing revenue through it. Close to the home, this has been a thing recently.
For me, it's definitely been prevalent. Like, in the background, I'm working on quite a big project for Amped, which is going to revolutionize. I'll put a big word, revolutionize, but it's going to drastically change the way we recruit talent. And it's going to drastically change the way that we screen and actually be able to find meaningful, like, great quality talent for companies and kind of marry those two things together. And I've been putting, you know, putting it through the tests and, you know, back office tests and data tests and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like at a stage where I'm like, I could probably launch this. I could probably send a mass email out and get 100 signups in the next couple of days. And it's like, you know, like, what if this happens? What if this happens? But those are only the things I'm going to know by launching it. And I can't sit in a sandbox forever. It's got to eventually go out into the big wide world.
Yeah. And what is the domino effect of not doing that?
Exactly. And what's the saying? Like, a bad decision made fast is better than a decision never made. Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah, because on the other side of it, in the last few weeks, you know, I've been hounding about our pipeline and sales and just trying to create traction in that space, which has then been kind of coming up against this rebuttal of product and service being up to standard. And, you know, the onflow of not onboarding talent into our new way of operating is that then the belief never comes around being able to service the sales that come in and get the talent through the door and talent in place. And then, you know, once that belief in the sales system wavers, then, you know, ultimately there's no traction in that space, there's no revenue, and you end up in this vicious cycle. And we're definitely both guilty of this, like, toxic trait that pops up. So I think it's a solid topic to touch on because it's present right now within the business that we they're trying to build.
I think for most listeners, it'll be present in some way, shape, or form in every business.
Yeah.
Whether that be hiring the next person, whether it be having, a funnel of co-founders that you need to choose from, it be that, what logo to choose. I mean, it can be the simplest things, but I saw a quote by Hormozy and it said, the heaviest things in life are not iron or gold. The heaviest things are unmade decisions. And I remember buying you a button that was like, it was called the decision-making button, wasn't it? And it actually, I've got this one here. I've got a yes button, and I love.
Yes! Y-E-S, yes. 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 Yeah.
Anyway, it was similar to that, but it made the decision for you, right? Like, I suppose it'd be interesting to know because I obviously know you personally, and you could probably speak a lot to the cycle of indecision and what causes it for you, maybe, or like what you've kind of had to learn over the last 5 years. Maybe we could use the example of when your car blew up.
I'm actually not sure what drives my indecision. Strength.
I like it.
Using the car. Oh, not just the car, but like I'm that personality that tries to weigh up the pros and cons for 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Before making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to actually making a decision that logically checks out, I find myself stuck in this swamp of, is this actually the right decision to make?
So what do you use to break yourself out of it? Because I only know the way you got out of the car situ was because you had the third baby born and you couldn't all fit in the small car.
Yeah, maybe I just lean into like these natural pressures of life that give me no other decision to make. Well, there is always a decision, but no other logical pathway to go down. Yeah, I'm still not sure what sends me over the edge other than kids. But on reflection, it's funny that the decision that is made consciously has always reflected, I guess, the decision that you feel is right inside before you verbalize what the decision's going to be.
You always know.
You always know. The gut always knows, apparently.
They say there's brain cells in the gut or something, or there's like some neurons in the gut or something like that. There's actually like a gut-mind connection.
Yeah. The biggest driver of poor decision making is that you're making decisions and not choices. We know the power of choice versus decision based on previous, and trying to choose freely based on previous stuff is never a choice. So with the car situ, it wasn't, I'd like to say it was a choice and not decision because there was nothing like historical impacting the choice. Actually, it was a decision.
It was the Audi sitting at home for 3 years.
Yeah. It was the on-finance grad scheme, brand new Audi, sitting on the driveway, use it for 12 months, come to New Zealand, never seen it again, hemorrhaging cash, and the new one was like, I shopped around for it must have been 3 or 4 months, getting lease quotes, then trying to tie it back to like cash, impact on cash. Right decision. Can we pick up a used one? Cash decision. So it was definitely hindered by money stories was a big one. And that actually shows up a lot in my life.
Again, I think it's different though, right? So when you look at like personal decisions and then you look at operational decisions, I feel like there can be a lot less emotion in those operational and strategic decisions, right? It can be facts-based and you can kind of just go through it, like the decision we made to steer down the remote staffing route versus go to the managed service route. Like that clarity of decision is kind of like, and makes such a difference to efforts and resource and like kind of everything, I suppose. And I've never been a massive like strategic thinker. It's something that I've always had to lean on you for or force myself to think kind of like strategically. But I find that decision-making process so much easier than whether to buy a car or not.
So question, with you conveying that it takes the emotion out of things when it's business versus personal, we've had an instance within our business, probably for the last 2.5 years, where we have had a contract that didn't make us any money. And despite numerous times numerous prompts to kind of fix a situation one way or another, that has only happened without your input most recently. So what would you say was a blocker for you in that scenario? Was it an emotional thing? If it was purely business, or is it not just a case of, it makes money or it doesn't, so we change it, fix it, or we get rid of it? Like what was coming up for you in that space?
I don't know. I think for me, it was one of those early contracts that that we sold that you feel like some level of loyalty to, or like that the service offering had changed slightly, so you kind of was like, oh, we'll just try to keep them happy, or provision of like trying to preserve revenue, but again, it's not preserving profit. So I think it was a mix of things, but yeah.
The flip side, like knowing that was the case, I found that really hard to avoid in the business. I try my best to be like, palm it off. This is going to sit with Josh and Robbie and whatever else. I'm not going to get involved despite getting DMs around certain things. But to me, I found it really hard to ignore that wasn't beneficial for us as a business. Yet was providing a lot of value to their business.
Yeah.
It's just funny how I didn't have that like emotional pitfall.
Yeah.
And although this is business and not personal stuff, as founders, I think, there definitely is emotional connections to things that happen.
100%. 110%. Yeah, it's so situational as well. Some people can have this feeling of, it's even in those early stages, like, and I think it's just experience. I honestly think it's experience. And when I look back at who I was 5 years ago, selling those first contracts, up at 11 p.m. at night, writing proposals and trying to find videos that validate what I'm saying, and like feeling like I wasn't good enough to sign the contract, versus now where I'm like, I won't tell you something signed until it's signed, and it's like, this is the price. I can move a little bit, but that's the price. And it's like that belief, I suppose. You build 5 years of belief in your industry, you build belief in you as a person and your delivery method and all that kind of stuff. I suppose that's what leads to faster decision making and not having so much emotion in what you're selling or in the contracts you're selling. So when price revisions do come up, it's like, okay, well, it's provisioned. It's in the contract. Like, we can just exercise it,
Yeah.
So I think that was, and maybe a bit of underperformance on the contract as well. Like, there's multiple things kind of going on that pulled that one together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of linkage as well, like personal, business wise. And like until
you can separate yourself, right?
Yeah.
No, because we talked to our really good friend in town who's got, a pretty well-established business, and, they always have a receivables issue, and, they sell a food product, but he's so involved with the customer that it's so hard for him to follow up cash really, like, in the way that's required to receive the cash that he needs to run the business. And that part of the business can only thrive once you separate yourself from it. And I suppose that's the process that we've been on, is like, pricing now doesn't really sit with us. There's a process for it. Contracts go under an annual review. We get sent the price adjustment recommendations, and they get exercised, and we deal with the pushback from any clients and adjust salaries and prices, as per normal. We built a team to take on a lot of these things, right? And that obviously makes it a lot easier, makes it a lot more transactional, so that these things do get done. And it's like, hey, these are the new prices. This is what has to happen. Lots of founders don't ever separate themselves because they feel like they're going to lose control.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been scouring X, formerly known as Twitter. That's pretty much my playground when I'm not being productive. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of threads flying around recently about essentially like the top 10 easiest businesses to set up. And I was reading one the other day, and it was about how the easiest business, quote unquote, is actually that of being self-employed. Like, going from employed to being self-employed, it's not a business. It's just you're buying yourself a job that you have kind of more parameters around. And it only kind of becomes a business, quote unquote, when you are in a position that you've built systems and you've built process and things within your business that once upon a time felt very personal and intimate, actually just becomes like another process. Writing proposals, all that sort of stuff we were heavily vested in. It felt very personal. Ultimately, like bird's eye view, it was just us doing another admin task because we built ourselves these full-time jobs rather than a systemized business that's going to operate with or without our daily input, which is kind of where we're at now. And we're starting to see more and more of those processes that were reliant on us being able to be delegated and given to somebody else. And I think that's when you choose to have them reflection moments that you're like, we have transitioned from like a self-employed new job kind of model into a functional system that will operate without our daily input. And then that's a massive achievement just in itself.
Huge.
Because then you get to play like on the business and not get stuck inside of it. You know, you get to step out and build these cool talent hubs that are going to drive efficiency and revolutionize how you find talent and shorten the recruitment timeframes. You get to go and build your outreach strategies and test and measure what that looks like. And meanwhile, the rest of the business is kind of flowing.
Yeah. It's a massive distinction, mate. And something I've only learned recently is like, when you think about selling a business, you are selling the business based on the processes that you've built to run the business and to produce the revenue and the profits that it produces, right? If it's all reliant on you don't have a sellable asset. And, we've been so focused on writing the SOPs and the playbooks and finding where there's faults. Like, massive one showed up yesterday. We served a job offer without a signed contract. Like, how does that even occur? It's not the first time. But those are the things that you are selling a new business owner to actually create that sellable, transferable asset. It's cool. I think, I don't know if you've noticed, seeing output happen that you've had no input in on. Like, new systems be built without you, or a proposal going out and you had no idea what it was for, but it was priced correctly and it's been signed, or, a client, hiring 3 new staff and you've had nothing to do with that. Those are the moments as founders I think we should really reflect on, or a client, for tech founders, a client freaking upselling themselves through your upsell activation process, on the app. Those things I think are the tiny little wins, but they're massive because you're moving in the right direction.
On, I guess, a playbook or a framework of overcoming avoidance, if we were to hash that out between us, what would a playbook look like on overcoming avoidance?
For me, I've noticed a massive change in my output and clarity recently. I don't know if you have, and just being all over a lot of the things that I needed to be over, but was avoiding being over, because it was actually on a coaching call with Dan, and he was talking to this other guy who said, like, what are you pretending you don't know, or what are you pretending not to know, because ignorance is better than actually knowing it. And there were so many things, like the sales process, the managing sales staff, like it's all stuff I knew what needed to be done, but and just saying, I don't know what needs to be done, it kind of like got me off the hook in some way. So I think just being like ruthlessly honest with your skill set and your previous knowledge, and looking at examples where you have one in a situation that, if you've sold a contract before, you can sell another one. If you have onboarded a client before, you can onboard another one. Like, yeah, you could have problems, but I think it's very quick for us founders to go, oh, I don't know how to do this. Oh, I don't know how to do that. And just throw your hands up and let that part of the business just go. And, snowballs. And then eventually you're trying to save it on the other side. So I think it's just being ruthlessly honest with your skill set, knowing what you know, and then like getting the help that you need for the areas that you actually don't know. Yeah, that's what I found anyway. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said. I think there's quite a few different angles with avoidance, because there are so many thoughts and feelings that drive you to avoid taking certain actions. I released a couple shorts, while the team produced some shorts of some stuff I was talking about, which was around cash and like avoiding looking at our cash balance, because I knew subconsciously that we weren't in a position cash-wise that I felt like we should be. Which driven this feeling of, I don't want to look at our cash position because then it's only going to confirm what I already know inside to be true. Or if I confirm it, then I've got to do something about it. And that was massively driving that avoidance factor. And then avoidance also shows up with other things. Like, you can knock out a daily to-do list, and there will be things on that list that you're actively avoiding. And more often than not, the task that you're avoiding, for me, I build up to be like, it's going to be really consuming. It's going to, once I get into it, it's never going to end. And then it turns out to be like the quickest 2 or 3 minute task that I could have done. And yet I've avoided it for 5 days. I've built up like this apprehension, anxiety of getting stuck into it. And then you sit on the other side of it and you're like, is that all that needed to happen? So I think, to combat that, other than like being brutally honest about, you just gotta step into it, like choose to step into it and tackle it head on. I don't know if that's like the most empowering playbook.
It's definitely not, but
It's not, is it? Like, but I don't know how else to frame it.
yeah, I mean, everyone's going to have their little quirks. Something I found when, like, do the hardest things the hardest things or the perceived hardest things you have to do in the day, do them in the morning because, those, then the rest of the day seems easy. That's a good little trick. The other thing I remind myself of in my current life situation is like everything I want is on the other side of what I'm avoiding. I think that was Chris Wilson. I don't know. He's got another amazing podcast. Something he said, and I was like, yeah, that's one of those things that will sit in my mind for a while because it is, right? Like the sales, the money, the building business, the making a difference. It's all on the, as founders, it's all on the other side of what we're avoiding doing. It's avoiding getting on that sales call. It's avoiding, and energetically as well, by avoiding it, you just keep pushing it away, pushing it down further and further. And it just builds up. And then, like you say, it could have been a 2-minute email that needed to be sent and it's taken a week to do it. And the impact just gets pushed down. I think another reason avoidance shows up as just lack of capacity, both from just a brain space capacity, like mental capacity, and time capacity issues. So yeah, I think that's also one that founders usually need to hire earlier than they think to be able to combat that, so they can free their brain up from doing the proposals to all of a sudden, focusing on the next development or focusing on the next, delivery method or whatever that might be. So focusing hard on that. And Dan's got a great concept called the pain line, where you hit the pain line where it's going to be, you feel like it's going to be harder to do the next task, or you feel like it's going to be the next part of the growth journey is hard. So you start self-sabotaging. So just noticing when that pops up as well is an important lesson. And hey, I'm coming up against self-sabotage. I've stopped selling. I've stopped doing this, which I know is what I needed to do. I've hit the pain line. Like, let's look at the business operation to see where I can how I can break through this. And that's, I think, an important thing it's just that self-awareness, I suppose. Like,
yeah,
self-aware enough to know that you're not doing the things you need to do to grow the business that you want to grow. Then you will inevitably catch yourself before the inaction actually has an effect on the business.
Yeah. So first step, self-awareness.
Yeah.
Building that consciousness to understand what's actually happening.
How you're feeling, what's going on internally, what's your internal thought process. Yeah.
Understand the cost of inaction.
Yeah.
Off the back of it. Second step, I think, would be, either stepping into, having like a framework to then help drive positive actions that kind of realigns you on the course you need to be on, or pushes you in front of the things you need to take. You could have some simple framework. I'm sure there's heaps on.
It's a simple to-do list. Yeah.
Also, building potentially like a partnership or a relationship with somebody or a community that you can communicate with when this actually pops up for you. And, I find it really useful to have you to lean on when something's going on, and getting perspectives or reaffirming belief systems, and having somebody just to hold you to account, massive impact. And then obviously step 3 is executing on what you are avoiding or have been avoiding.
Yeah. And know that you need to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think it's been a great chat. Very easy chat.
Yeah. It's almost like we've got heaps of experience. And
actually scary how easy that chat was.
What are we avoiding? Hard chats.
But again, for our listeners, appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you haven't listened to our other episodes, there's some great episodes where we've done interviews with leading influencers in Australia, some franchisors who are blowing up in the creative space. We've talked about money, parenthood, business, all that kind of stuff. So have a look back at our other episodes. But if you don't want to, that's fine as well. Listen to the new ones because they're getting better and better every single time, thanks to producer Andrea and editor Lester, who's come on board recently. So welcome, editor Lester, to the Playbook Pod. Welcome to the new snapback hat for a game that I used to play. And we will see you on the next episode. Peace.
Ciao.